Our lesson today is all about connections in literature. You may ask yourself, what does it mean to make a connection while reading? Making connections is a reading comprehension strategy that helps students find meaning in a text by connecting it to their background knowledge. There are 3 ways to connect to your reading. First, you can use connections from text to self. Second, text to text. Third, text to world. How do you make text to self connections? We make text to self connections when we can relate what we are reading to our own personal experiences. Have you ever been reading a book and thought to yourself, oh, I've had something like that happen to me before? That is how you are making a text to self connection. How do I make text to text connections? We make text to text connections when we relate something we have read before to something we are currently reading. Have you ever been reading a sequel to a book and realized, oh, this sounds familiar? When you're using your prior knowledge to connect to another book, you're making those text to text connections. How do I make text to world connections? You can make text to world connections when you relate what you've read to what is happening or has happened in the world. Are there similar current events that are happening now that relate to what you're reading? What about things that have happened in history? Make sure you take some time to make those text to world connections. It can sometimes be difficult to make these connections while reading. Sometimes we need some help in order to make these connections. When making text to self connections, ask yourself, what does this story remind you of? Can you relate to the characters in the story? Does anything in this story remind you of anything in your own life? While making those text to text connections, ask yourself, what does this remind you of in another book you've read? How is this text similar to other things you have read? And how is this text different from other things you have read? When making those text to world connections, ask yourself, what does this remind you of in the real world? How are events in this story similar to things that have happened in the real world? And how are events in this story different from things that happen in the real world? Congratulations! You are now ready to start making connections throughout your reading.